Somewhere far, far away in the southern seas lies a mysterious volcanic island. Unlike most volcanic islands, this one was inhabited by strange mythical beings that could wield the powers of fire like no other. And within the volcano lies an inner sanctuary that is devoted to the great being Garunix, who guards and protects the volcano, the very source of their power. However, if they should use too much of the fire's power, it will come with a great price. This does not concern the inhabitants though, because it is through that very same fire that they are reborn. And through this cycle of death and rebirth, they can continue to fight for as long as necessary. Should you ever set foot on this island, tread carefully, or you shall feel the wrath of the Fire Kings! What's going on, everyone? This is SynchroGuy, and I'm here today to give you a reveal on the Fire King deck. The Fire King archetype was first released back in 2013. 10 years later, and after a few waves of one-off supports from previous booster sets, we are finally getting more dedicated support in the brand new revamped Fire King's structure deck. This structure deck brings stuff that the archetype has been needing to really push it to the next level. And in fact, it might be just be enough to make this deck top tier competitive for the very first time in its history in Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, I'm not going to go over all of the Fire King cards in this video, just the brand new ones and ones you'll most likely see in future Fire King decks. I'll also be including cards that you should be running should you choose to build a Fire King deck yourself. First up, we have Sacred Fire King Garunix. This card's effects reads as follows. If your monster that was originally fire is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from your graveyard if it was there when the monster was destroyed, or hand even if not. If this card is no more special summon, you can destroy one of fire beast, beast warrior, or winged beast monster in your hand, deck, or face-up field, except for itself. And if you do, this card gains attack equal to half the destroyed monster's attack it had there until the end of the turn. You can only use each effect of Sacred Fire King Garunix once per turn. So anyway, this monster is really good. Being 2700 attack beater that's not only easy to summon but can increase his attack even higher to give your opponent quite the beatdown is really good. But not only that, he can help you trigger many of your other cards since he can destroy anything, including a card in the deck. That's a layer of consistency right there. You will want to play this card at 1 or 2 copies. Well, yes, he is good, but he's only good when he gets to pop off, no pun intended, when one of your fire monsters gets destroyed, which he can't really do by himself. Plus, you can usually search for him in the deck, so you don't really need to play 3 copies of this card. Next up, we have Kieran. No, not you. You're so banned. Get out of here. There we go. Fire King High Avatar Kieran. This guy reads, during the main phase, if this card is in your hand, quick effect. You can destroy one other fire monster in your hand or face-up field. And if you do, special summon this card. And if this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one Fire King monster from your hand or graveyard except for itself. Then you can destroy one card on the field. You can only use each effect of Fire King High Avatar Kieran once per turn. This monster is nuts. Like, seriously, the nuts. His quick effect is so good. Not only just because it triggers some of your monsters, but it also means he can help you set up before you even have to go first. Like, if your opponent went to go first and you were going second, you can have a chance to really set up a board before you even gets to your turn. That's how crazy this can be. Your turn? I think you mean our turn. He can also help you avoid some card effects your opponent may try to throw at you. They can't be hit if they're not on the field anymore. And his effect upon being destroyed not only nets you back a monster, but also can pop any card in the field. Like, no matter what happens, this effect is gonna net you a +1 against your opponent. This card is such a gem for the Fire King deck that it would be a crime not to play 3 copies of this card. Next up, we have Fire King Avatar Rangbali, and his effect reads, if a face-up Fire King monster you control is destroyed by a card effect, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. When a spell or trap card or effect is activated while this card is on the field, quick effect. You can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy one other fire monster in your hand or face-up field. You can only use each effect of Fire King Avatar Rangbali once per turn. Now, having a spell and trap negator is nice to have. However, if you're gonna play this card, you best play it at 1 copy. While he is a negator and can easily special summon himself, he doesn't really do much when he gets destroyed. Now if he could special summon himself from the graveyard as well from the hand, then maybe we could consider bumping this guy up to 2. But since that's not the case, playing this guy at 1 is more than enough. We can easily search for him, so don't worry too much about it. Our next card is Legendary Fire King Ponix. This cute little bird's effect reads as follows. If your monster that was originally fired is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is normal or special summon, you can add 1 Fire King spell or trap from your deck to your hand. During the next standby phase after this card was destroyed and sent to the graveyard, add this card from your graveyard to your hand. You can only use each effect of Legendary Fire King Ponix once per turn. Having a spell and trap searcher that is easy to summon is very nice, especially when you can summon him even during your opponent's turn, so you get 2 searchers off of 1 card. And you can add himself back from your graveyard to your hand when he gets popped. That's a good way to stay consistent and keep yourself in the duel. Right now, he's definitely a 3-up for any Fire King deck. The last new monster we're going to go over is Garunix Eternity Hyang of the Fire Kings. This colorful looking bird requires 2 or more level 8 monsters, and his effect reads as follows. If this card is Xyz summoned, you can destroy all other monsters on the field. You can detach 1 material from this card and then target 1 spell or trap card on the field, destroy it. If you do, this card gains 500 attack. If this card is destroyed while it has material, you can special summon Fire King monsters from your graveyard up to the number of materials this card had. You can only use each effect of Garunix Eternity Hyang of the Fire Kings once per turn. So upon summon, he is a board wipe which can clear the path that is blocking between you and victory. Granted, your other monsters will get destroyed as well, but since they join game pop, it's all good. And because of that, it's going to be more of a hindrance towards your opponent than it will be for you. And having a spell trap pop effect is very nice to have, especially since that means you have a better chance of not running into something that's probably going to cause you problems. But the other best part is how he can bring back some of your other Fire King monsters if he gets destroyed. So if you're in the battle phase and you attack with Garunix Eternity, you could then try to use an effect that could pop set Garunix Eternity, trigger its effect to special summon back 2 more Fire King monsters, and since you're still in the battle phase, you can attack with them, and that's probably more than enough to call it GG. I would say you want to play this guy at 2 copies for reasons why you'll see in a bit. Moving on to the spells and traps, we have Fire King Skyburn. This quick play spell reads, target an equal number of Fire King monsters you control and cards your opponent controls. Destroy them. If a Fire King card you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you could banish this card from your graveyard instead. You can only use 1 Fire King Skyburn effect per turn and only once that turn. This card is really good since it means you have a chance to try to disrupt your opponent's plays. And again, your monsters love getting popped or seeing their other companions get popped, so it won't matter too much if you pop your own monsters. It's like, now that I think about it, did those guys have did they have a king seeing their own guys get popped? Not to king shame anyone. Cut the foot. But of course, having a little destruction protection effect is also nice to have, especially when you want to keep one of your monsters alive for just a little bit longer. At most, you want to play this card at 1 copy since it can be easily searched by Ponix, and mostly because it doesn't do anything right away since it requires for your opponent to have a little something, so you don't want to see this card in your opening hand too much. Next up, we have the contiguous spell Fire King Sanctuary. This spell card reads, when this card is activated, you can place 1 Fire King island from your deck face up in your field zone. Once per turn, if a card in your field zone will be destroyed by card effect, you can destroy 1 fire monster in your hand or face up field instead. Once per turn, if your opponent special summons a monster, you can, immediately after this effect resolves, Xyz summon 1 Fire Xyz monster using only Fire King monsters you control. You can only activate 1 Fire King Sanctuary per turn. Now you see why I recommend you play 2 copies of Garunix Eternity? Thanks to this continuous spell, you can summon it during your opponent's turn and mess with their plays even more. But the main reason you will want to play this card is because it will get you instantly access to Fire King Island, the field spell for the deck, which we will go over in just a bit. And being able to protect your field spell is more of a big deal than you think. So Fire King Sanctuary is definitely a 3-up in this deck. Finally, the last new card is a trap card called Echelon of the Fire Kings, and this card reads, special summon 3 fire monsters, 1 beast, 1 beast warrior, 1 winged beast, 1 each from your hand, deck, and graveyard, but their effects are negated, also destroy them during the end phase. You can banish this card from your graveyard. This turn, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when you normal or special summon a Fire King monster. you can only use each effect of Echelon the Fire Kings once per turn. Sounds pretty good, but I would advise that you play 0 copies of this card right now. Its active effect is pretty cool, but since it's a form of a track card, that means you will have to wait a turn, and by then you should already have established a strong field, so it's not really necessary. Plus, this is just going to take a little bit more of a setup. Granted, you could just play 1, but trust me, the way the deck is now, you don't really need this card, at least for the time being. I mean, yeah, sure, the graveyard effect could be very nice, but right now in today's metagame, it's not quite needed for the time being. Plus, if your opponent tries to throw anything, you've got plenty of ways to pop your own monsters in response to it. So yeah, for now, play 0 copies. That does it for all the new cards, so now let's take a look at some of the older cards that you'll most likely be seeing in future Fire King decks, starting with the field spell, Fire King Island. This field spell reads, if this face-up card in the field zone is sent to the graveyard or banished, destroy all monsters you control. You can only use one of the following effects of Fire King Island per turn, and only once that turn. During your main phase, you can destroy one monster in your hand or you control, and if you do, add one Fire King monster from your deck to your hand. If you control no monsters, you can special summon one Fire Winged Beast type monster from your hand. Now do you see why the protection effect of Fire King's Sanctuary is such a big deal? Well, yes, most of you guys do enjoy getting it popped, but if your opponent is smart, they may go after this like after you've already used your monster's effects. Not to mention, some of your monster's effects do have to wait until like the next standby phase for them to trigger, and by then it may already be a bit too late. Regardless though, this field spell is really good as you can pop on your guys to get a search and trigger them on top of all that. So for example, if you were to summon out Ponix, use this effect to search for Sanctuary, activate the Sanctuary to activate the Fire King Island, then use the island to pop the Ponix to search for, say, Sacred Fire King Garunix, then you can trigger that Garunix's effect, like the special summon itself, and then from there you're just off to the races. You probably won't be needing to use that special summon effect of Fire King Island, but it's there if needed. I would say you want to play 2 copies of this card, but you can bump it up to 3 if you want, but you don't really need to see it too much. I mean, you were also playing 3 copies of Sanctuary, so you'll see plenty of it, so playing more than 2 may not be necessary. Next card we're going to take a look at is Fire King Avatar Avada. Now, this card's effect reads, when a monster effect is activated while this monster is on the field, quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy one other fire monster in your hand or field. If this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can target one Fire Beast, Beast Warrior, or Winged Beast monster in your graveyard, except Fire King Avatar Avada, special summon it, but it has its effects negated. Also, it is destroyed during the end phase. You can only use each effect of Fire King Avatar Avada once per turn. So he's pretty similar to Rank Bali, except his negation negates monster effects. What makes him better than Rank Bali is that when he gets popped, you can special summon back any one of your other Fire King monsters. Now see, if Rank Bali had a similar effect like this, we might play him on more than 1 copy. And it's because of this effect, along with the monster negation effect, that you will want to play 3 copies of Avada. Next card we're going to look at is Fire King Avatar Barong. This card's effect reads, if a face-up Fire King monster you control is destroyed by a card effect, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. During the next standby phase, after this card was destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, add 1 Fire King card from your deck to your hand, except for itself. Albeit his special summon effect is nice, but may not always be necessary for the deck. As for the search effect, it is a bit slow, but hey, you know, getting some free searches and set yourself up for the next turn is always still nice to have. Best to play 1 copy of this card, since, well, he doesn't really do too much for you, and plus you can easily destroy him from practically anywhere. Next card we're looking at is Circle of the Fire Kings. This card reads, target 1 fire monster you control and 1 fire monster in your graveyard. Destroy that monster you control, and if you do, special summon that other monster from your graveyard. You can only activate 1 Circle of the Fire Kings per turn. The main reason you will want to play this card is to dodge targeting effects, or any effects that could hurt if they go after one of your big guys. And I guess there's also for the battle phase if you want to swing it for more damage, but most of the time you want to be using this card to try to dodge targeting effects. If you're going to play this card, play out 1 copy, since Ponix can easily search it out. And I guess the last card you may see players use in a Fire King deck is Fire King High Avatar Garunix. This card reads, during the next standby phase, after this card was destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, special summon this card from the graveyard. When you do, destroy all other monsters on the field.
When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one Fire King monster from your deck, except for itself. A board wipe is cool, but since it only happens during the standby phase and it's mandatory, it may not always be the best. While getting a free special summon from the deck is cool, that only happens when he gets killed by battle, not when you pop him. It's not going to be doing much for you on your own turn. The reason players may want to play this card is that he's another level A body that you could use to try to exceed summon into Garunix Eternity. However, just your Sacred Fire King Garunix and Kirin are enough since they're both level A monsters that you can easily special summon. But if you're going to choose to play this card, play it at one copy. And that's all the Fire King cards we'll be discussing about in this video. Again, there's plenty of other Fire King cards that I haven't gone over, so if you want to look at them, you can do so at your own free time. But besides those Fire King cards, there are plenty of other cards and engines that you can mix with the Fire King deck that can really push the power and consistency of the deck. The most popular version of the Fire King deck right now is the Simple Spoil Engine one, where it can get you access to Ponics straight away. And of course, once we get the Phantom Nightmares set next year, we will also be getting support for the new Snake Eyes archetype, which you can also mix together with the Fire King deck to really push this deck to a new level. And right now it's currently considered to be the best version of the Fire King deck. But besides that, there's plenty of other versions of the Fire King deck you could also try to make. For example, since the Fire King deck plays a bunch of Beast Warrior, Wheat Beast monsters, you could try to mix it with the Tri-Brigade archetype. Or since this archetype doesn't really need to use its extra deck a whole lot, you could try and throw in like some Dogmatica cards. Or heck, the deck even has a room where you can play Super Poly in the case that you need to get rid of your opponent's board that's going to cause you a lot of trouble. But really, you could just throw in about just any other extra deck monsters into this deck's extra deck. Yeah, like you could throw in Zeus, Axis, Cold, Sunlight Wolf, the whole shebang. But now here's a big question. How well does this deck stack against the current meta? Well, let's see. Against Rescue Ace, the current best deck of the format, it could be tough, especially if they manage to resolve Turbulence Effect and get to set 3 or 4 spells and traps. Getting the card advantage against a deck like Fire Kings could to swing the game in their favor. But if the Fire King deck can go first, it could have a good chance to try to slow down the Rescue Ace deck. But if they go second, they may have to use some non-engine cards to deal with all of that consistency the Rescue Ace deck just made. Against Unchained, this might be tough for the Fire King deck since Unchained is an archetype that loves getting their own cards destroyed left and right. And it'll also be especially tough if the Unchained player uses the Unchained Link monsters to link away your Fire King monsters, which means you won't be able to trigger their effects since they weren't destroyed by a card effect. But still, Fire Kings could put up a good fight against the Unchained deck. They just have to play their cards right. Against Purely, Fire King can set up good interruptions going first. Going second though, that's a maybe. But since Fire Kings have the ability to play on turn 0, they can have a chance to try to hurt the Purely deck a little bit. But some non-engine cards won't hurt either. Against Tier Limits, Fire Kings could actually put up a good fight considering how persistent the deck is now. But they will still need to watch out for cards like Super Poly, Nibiru, Abyss Swirl, and stuff like that. But going against a deck engine versus engine, I feel like that Fire Kings have a good chance of winning. And finally, Mania. If Mania is able to go first and establish their board without any interruption, it could be a very tough battle for the Fire King deck. But not impossible. Probably. But if the Fire King deck is able to go first, I feel like they have enough forms of interruption to really put the brakes on Mania. With all that said, I would give the Fire King deck an 89 out of 100. Again, once we get the Phantom Nightmares set along with the new Maze of Memories set next year, they're going to bring some new cards that are going to add some good consistency to the Fire King deck that could potentially push the deck into the tier 1 status. Whether that will happen though, that remains to be seen until we get there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to hit that like button and comment down below what you think of the Fire King deck and if you think this deck has a chance of being a top tier meta for the future format. And don't forget to subscribe to get more of your daily dose of Yu-Gi-Oh goodness. I'll see you guys in the next one, and I hope you have/had an awesome day today.